You make a smart choice. 6 months later, your brain tells you it was stupid, even when it worked out fine. This happens to every smart guy. You pick a job, you start a business, you make any big decision. Later, when you know how things ended, your mind says you should have seen that coming. But here's the thing, you couldn't have seen it coming. Nobody could. Your brain is lying to you. This lie is killing your confidence. Romans figured this out 2,000 years ago. They had a simple trick. It stopped their memory from attacking their judgment. Modern scientists only discovered this brain trick in 1975. They gave it a fancy name, hindsight bias. But Romans already knew how to beat it. Here's why this matters. Every time your memory makes you doubt a good choice, other people notice. They hear uncertainty in your voice. They start questioning your judgment too. Smart men lose respect this way, not because they make bad choices, because their own memory convinces them their good choices were bad. You've probably felt this. You make a decision that seems smart at the time. You use the best information available. You think through the options carefully. You choose what makes the most sense. Then things change. New information comes out. The situation shifts. Your brain starts attacking the decision. You should have known the market would crash. You should have seen that person's true character. You should have predicted that opportunity would come up. Your brain rewrites history. It pretends all this new information was available when you made your choice. It makes you feel stupid for not being psychic. This destroys confidence in smart men faster than any outside enemy. In the next 20 minutes, you'll learn the Roman memory reset. This stops your brain from lying about the past. You'll keep confidence in good decisions. Others will notice this confidence and respect you for it. But there's one piece most men miss. Without this piece, everything else is just theory. This piece separates men who know about the problem from men who actually solve it. Here's how your brain tricks you. You make a choice with the information you have. Later, you get new information. Your brain pretends you had that new information all along. Example: you invest in a stock. The company looks solid, good revenue, smart leadership, growing market. You read the reports, you analyze the numbers, you talk to people in the industry. Everything points to growth. 6 months later, the stock drops. A scandal nobody saw coming causes this. The CEO was hiding debt. No analyst predicted it. No public information suggested problems. Your brain says, you should have known about the scandal. But you couldn't have known. The scandal wasn't public. The CEO was actively hiding it. There were no warning signs. You made a smart choice with good information. Your brain doesn't care. It rewrites history to make you feel stupid. This happens with everything. Job choices, relationship decisions, business moves, dating choices, investment decisions, career changes. Your memory attacks every decision once you know how it ended. Another example. You turned down a job offer to stay at your current company. The new job seemed risky. Your current job was stable. You had good relationships with colleagues. Staying seemed smart. 1 year later, the company you turned down gets bought for millions. Everyone there makes a fortune. Your brain immediately says, you should have taken that job. You should have seen they were going to get bought. But there was no way to predict the buyout. It wasn't in the news. The company wasn't even profitable when they offered you the job. You made a reasonable decision with available information. Your memory doesn't care about facts. It cares about making you doubt yourself. Scientists call this hindsight bias. They've studied it for 50 years. They proved it affects everyone. Smart people actually fall for it more. They're better at imagining what-if scenarios. The smarter you are, the better your brain gets at convincing you that past unknowns were actually knowable. Here's the damage it does. You start second-guessing yourself. You ask for more opinions before deciding. You explain your reasoning before anyone asks. You add words like maybe and possibly to everything. You hedge your statements. I think this might work, but I could be wrong. This seems like a good idea, but who knows? I'm pretty sure this is right, but let me check with someone else. Others hear this uncertainty. They think, if he doesn't trust his own judgment, why should I? Your credibility drops. People bring you fewer important problems. They look elsewhere for leadership. They start questioning decisions you haven't even made yet. This creates a downward spiral. The less people trust your judgment, the more you doubt yourself. The more you doubt yourself, the less people trust your judgment. Roman generals saw this destroying good commanders. Smart leaders would freeze up on simple decisions. They'd lost trust in their own thinking. Capable men would start overthinking basic choices. They'd seek too much input before making obvious decisions. They'd explain their reasoning defensively before anyone questioned it. Soldiers noticed this energy shift. They stopped following commanders who constantly second-guessed themselves. Military effectiveness dropped not because of outside threats, but because of internal doubt. Romans had a solution. Before modern psychology existed, they figured out how to protect their minds from this memory trap. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this exact problem in his personal journal. As emperor, he made huge decisions with incomplete information every day. He noticed his memory would attack past decisions once he knew how they ended. Even good decisions that worked out well. Military campaigns that succeeded would later seem obviously correct. Diplomatic choices that prevented wars would seem like easy decisions in hindsight. Economic policies that helped the empire would appear inevitable after seeing results. But Marcus knew these decisions weren't obvious or easy when he made them. They involved real uncertainty, real risk, real pressure. So he developed a practice to protect his judgment from memory attacks. He would write down his thought process before making major decisions. What information did he have? What were his goals? What constraints did he face? What were the risks? Later, when reviewing decisions, he would read these notes first. This reminded him of his original context before his memory could rewrite it. Seneca wrote about it too. He said, "The mind, once it knows the ending, convinces itself it saw the path clearly from the beginning." He taught wealthy Romans to guard against this mental trick. He knew it would destroy their business judgment if they didn't. Seneca had them practice decision archaeology. Before judging any past choice, they would dig back to uncover their original reasoning. What did they know then? What were they trying to achieve? What information was missing? Roman military academies trained commanders in context recreation. Before judging any past decision, they would mentally return to that original moment. What information existed then? What were the constraints? What were they trying to achieve? What pressures were they facing? What did success look like from that perspective? Only after fully recreating that context would they evaluate the decision. This prevented hindsight from poisoning their confidence in future decisions. Sun Tzu called hindsight the general's greatest enemy, the one that lives in his own mind. He understood that commanders who let memory attack their judgment would lose wars before outside enemies arrived. Epictetus taught his students to separate what happened from what we now know about what happened. He knew that mixing these two destroyed good judgment. Modern research proves the Romans were right. Studies show people who practice contextual decision review maintain better judgment confidence. They make superior choices under pressure. People who judge past decisions in context rather than hindsight show higher confidence in their judgment process, better performance on future decisions, less anxiety about making choices, and more respect from others who seek their input. The Romans were 2,000 years ahead of modern psychology. While scientists were just discovering the problem, Romans had already solved it. Most men try to fight hindsight bias by arguing with their memory. They tell themselves, "I couldn't have known that," or "I made the best choice with available information." This doesn't work. You're still looking backward with outcome knowledge and trying to ignore it. Your brain is too smart for this approach. The Roman approach is different. They didn't argue with hindsight. They eliminated it entirely. Here's how. The present context reset. When you catch yourself thinking, "I should have known," immediately ask, "What did I actually know at that specific moment?" Then mentally travel back to that exact moment, not just remembering what you knew, actually putting yourself back in that time and place. What season was it? What pressures were you facing? What information had just arrived? What were you trying to achieve? What limited your options? Who was giving you advice? What did your gut tell you? Recreate that moment completely. Feel the uncertainty you felt then. Remember the constraints that existed. Recall what success looked like from that perspective. What were you worried about? What seemed most important? What information were you waiting for? What deadlines were you facing? Put yourself back in that exact mindset. Remember your energy level, your stress level, your confidence level at that time. Only then ask, given what I knew then, what I was trying to achieve, and what limited me, was this a reasonable choice? From inside that original moment, with only that information, facing those exact pressures, evaluate the decision. Here's what happens when you do this correctly. The obvious choice from hindsight often wasn't obvious at all from the original context. You realize your decision was actually smart, given what you knew then. Sometimes you'll discover the choice you're now second-guessing was actually the best available option at the time. The information that makes it seem wrong now simply didn't exist then. Other times you'll see genuine lessons to learn, but you'll learn them without attacking your judgment process. You'll think, next time I'm in a similar situation, I'll look for this type of information, instead of, I'm an idiot for not seeing this coming. This protects your confidence in your judgment process. You learn from the outcome without attacking your thinking ability. The respect change happens immediately. When you stop undermining your own judgment, others notice. You speak with more certainty. You make decisions with cleaner energy. You stop over-explaining your reasoning. You stop hedging your statements with unnecessary qualifiers. You stop seeking excessive input to avoid responsibility. People sense this confidence and trust your judgment more. Here's a practical example. Let's say you hired someone who turned out to be a bad fit. Your memory says, you should have seen they were wrong for the job. Instead of accepting this attack, reset to the hiring context. What did you know about them during interviews? How did they present themselves? What did their references say? What experience did they have? What were you looking for in the role? Often you'll realize they interviewed well. They had good references. They seemed qualified based on available information. The problems that emerged weren't visible during hiring. This doesn't mean you can't learn. Maybe you'll decide to check references more thoroughly or ask different interview questions. But you learn without concluding you have bad judgment. This one shift, from outcome-based evaluation to context-based evaluation, protects your decision-making confidence while still allowing you to improve. Marcus Aurelius used this daily. Roman commanders used this after every battle. They would gather to review tactical decisions, but started each review by recreating the fog of war that existed during actual fighting. Starting tomorrow, every time you think, "I should have known," immediately reset to that original context. This technique works in every area of life where you make decisions under uncertainty, which is every area of life. Business decisions. You launch a product that fails. Instead of, "I should have known it wouldn't work," reset to launch context. What market research did you have? What did early customers say? What were competitors doing? Often you'll realize the decision was smart given available information. Investment choices. You buy a stock that drops. Instead of, "I should have seen this coming," reset to purchase context. What did the financials show? What was the analyst consensus? What was happening in the sector? You'll often find your analysis was solid, even if the outcome disappointed. Relationship decisions. You date someone who turns out to be wrong for you. Instead of, "I should have known they were bad for me," reset to early dating context. How did they present themselves? What did you learn about them gradually? What red flags were actually visible versus what became clear later? Career moves. You take a job that doesn't work out. Instead of, "I should have known this company had problems," reset to job offer context. What did you know about the company culture? What did interviewers tell you? What research was possible? Often problems that seem obvious in hindsight weren't visible during the hiring process. Hiring decisions. You hire someone who doesn't perform well. Instead of, "I should have seen they weren't qualified," reset to interview context. How did they present in interviews? What did their work samples show? What did references say? Bad hires often interview well and have good references. The key is always the same. Judge the decision based on the context that existed when you made it, not the outcome you discovered later. This doesn't mean avoiding responsibility. You still learn from outcomes. You still adjust your approach based on results. But you learn without attacking your judgment process. When you do this consistently, several things happen. You maintain confidence in your decision-making ability. You trust your judgment more, which leads to cleaner, faster decisions. Others sense this confidence and trust your judgment more too. You make better future decisions. When you're not worried about being perfect, you can focus on being smart with available information. You earn more respect. People notice when someone makes decisions with conviction and stands behind them appropriately. You feel less anxiety about choosing. Decision-making becomes less stressful when you're not trying to predict unpredictable outcomes. You develop what Romans called time power, the ability to operate effectively in the present without being haunted by outcomes you couldn't have predicted. This is why some men seem unshakable in their judgment, while others constantly second-guess themselves. It's not natural confidence. It's learned wisdom about how memory works and how to protect your judgment from its tricks. Harvard researchers discovered hindsight bias in 1974. They asked students to predict historical events, then later asked them to recall their original predictions. Students consistently remembered being more accurate than they actually were. The researchers won awards for this breakthrough in understanding human psychology. But Seneca wrote about this exact mental trap in 65 AD, 1,900 years earlier. Marcus Aurelius developed practical solutions for it while running the Roman Empire. Epictetus taught specific exercises to overcome it. Sun Tzu warned military leaders about it in The Art of War. Modern psychology finally caught up to ancient wisdom, but missed the most important part: practical solutions. Academic research confirms hindsight bias exists and affects everyone. But psychology offers little defense beyond being aware of it. Knowing about the problem doesn't solve it. Roman philosophy provides complete systems for protecting your judgment from memory attacks. This isn't just knowledge, it's mental armor you can use immediately. Contemporary brain science actually proves the Romans were right about how memory works. Your brain doesn't store exact copies of past experiences. It reconstructs memories using current knowledge. When you remember making a decision, your brain automatically includes information you learned afterward. This makes past choices seem more obvious than they actually were. Romans understood this without brain scans or laboratory studies. They figured it out through practical experience under high-stakes pressure. Military commanders couldn't afford to have their judgment undermined by memory tricks. Business leaders couldn't let hindsight destroy their confidence in future decisions. Political leaders needed to make choices with incomplete information and stand behind them appropriately. So they developed techniques that work in real life, under real pressure, with real consequences. The Roman advantage comes from combining philosophical understanding with daily practice. They didn't just study the problem, they solved it. Modern men who learn these ancient techniques report higher confidence in their judgment, better performance under pressure, more respect from colleagues and family, less anxiety about making decisions, and improved leadership effectiveness. This 2,000-year head start explains why some men demonstrate rock-solid judgment, while others constantly second-guess good decisions. Here's what Romans understood that modern men miss. Your relationship with your past decisions determines your respect in the present. When you constantly second-guess yourself through hindsight, others sense that uncertainty. They hear it in your voice during meetings. They see it in how you present ideas. They feel it in your energy when making group decisions. This uncertainty is contagious. If you don't trust your own judgment, why should anyone else? Think about the most respected men you know. They make decisions with conviction. They stand behind their choices, even when outcomes aren't perfect. They learn from mistakes without torturing themselves about obvious signs they missed. This isn't because they're naturally more confident. It's because they've learned to separate decision quality from outcome knowledge. They judge their past choices based on the context that existed when they made them, not the results they discovered later. This protects their confidence in their judgment process. Others feel this confidence and respond to it. They bring bigger problems to someone who trusts their own thinking. They seek input from someone who demonstrates clear reasoning under uncertainty. This creates an upward spiral. The more people trust your judgment, the more confident you become in your thinking. The more confident you become, the more people trust your judgment. Here's how this shows up practically. In meetings, you present ideas without unnecessary hedging. Instead of, I think this might work, but I could be wrong. You say, based on the information we have, this is the best approach. When making group decisions, you share your reasoning clearly and stand behind it. You don't seek excessive input to avoid responsibility. When outcomes don't match expectations, you adjust strategy without questioning your fundamental competence. You think, this new information changes our approach, instead of, I should have seen this coming. People notice this energy. They start bringing you more important decisions. They seek your perspective on difficult problems. They trust your input because you demonstrate reliable thinking under uncertainty. Compare this to men who let hindsight undermine their judgment. They over-explain their reasoning before anyone asks. They hedge every statement with qualifiers. They seek multiple opinions before making obvious decisions. In meetings, they sound uncertain. I'm not sure, but maybe we could try. Or, this might work, but there are probably better ideas. Others hear this uncertainty and respond accordingly. They look elsewhere for decisive leadership. They bring fewer important problems to someone who doesn't trust their own thinking. The respect you earn through judgment confidence creates several benefits. People seek your input on important decisions because you demonstrate clear thinking under uncertainty. Your family trusts your guidance because you don't panic and start doubting sound advice when outcomes become clear. Colleagues bring you bigger problems because you show reliable judgment that doesn't collapse under pressure. Friends value your counsel because you've proven you can maintain clarity even when results involve unpredictable factors. This respect compounds over time. Each decision you make with appropriate confidence, each choice you stand behind despite imperfect outcomes, each moment you resist memory's attempt to poison your judgment. All of these build a reputation for solid thinking that others come to rely on. This Roman memory technique is one piece of complete mental armor ancient warriors used under pressure. Marcus Aurelius mastered emotional control techniques that prevented manipulation attempts from affecting his judgment. When advisors tried to pressure him into poor decisions, he had specific methods for staying clear-headed. Seneca developed practical wisdom for handling complex power dynamics and earning genuine respect from both allies and enemies. He knew how to maintain influence without creating resentment. Epictetus created training methods for building unshakable confidence that others immediately recognize and respect. His students could walk into any room and command attention through presence alone. Other Roman leaders discovered methods for reading people accurately when they're trying to hide their true intentions. They could spot deception, identify genuine character, and predict behavior under pressure. They also developed techniques for making strategic decisions with incomplete information. When you can't wait for perfect data, you need systems for choosing wisely with what you have. Each principle builds on the others. Together, they create what Romans called complete brain power. The ability to think clearly, decide confidently, and maintain respect regardless of external circumstances or pressure from people who want to undermine your credibility. Every week, we explore different aspects of Roman philosophy that solve problems modern men face. This isn't academic theory that sounds impressive, but doesn't work. It's practical wisdom tested under the highest stakes for thousands of years. Subscribe to continue building mental strength through ancient principles proven effective by history's most successful leaders.